Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is Wednesday, March the 5th. This is the A block, which means we start at pretty much the top of the hour. That is John Combest. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Brad.
John, every single day, puts together this incredible list of all these things going on in the state of Missouri, things you should know about, news articles, sometimes some very serious stuff, sometimes some somewhat humorous stuff, sometimes things that aren't supposed to be humorous that are extremely humorous, if you know what I'm saying, John. And, John, before we get into the top three, I have to say, I have to ask you, did you watch the president's presentation last night?
I did not.
Well, you don't know about this then, do you?
No, I don't.
Well,
I mean, I've seen clips on social media, but I feel like you're about to drop a piece of news here.
Oh, well, there was a little bit of chaos created by the Democrats. And at one point in time, one of the Democratic representatives, I think his name is Mr. Green, had to be escorted out of the House of Representatives. And do you know that they had two local people in D.C., two local people from the Westplex in D.C. to handle those matters last night?
No way. Were they fans of the R&B crooner Al Green? Or who were they, Brad?
No, one of them was Bill Eigel. He's the guy that went up and essentially say, hey, I'm really good at throwing people out of events, so dude, you're out of here. So, and the other one, well, we won't go into who the other one was, but she was going to be used, but they only had to escort one person out. So she was the second person who was going to escort somebody out. So, but anyway, that's the whole story. You didn't know that. And Bill Eigel, you had no idea he was in D.C. last night. You had no, because the thing about Bill Eigel is he's an imposing individual. He's like 6'8", and
he's a tall guy. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to mess with Bill Eigel. When Bill Eigel comes up to you and says, it's time to leave, you know what, John?
What it's time to leave, right?
It's time to leave. Yes, that's exactly.
And I mean, you could almost say that Bill Eigel and that combination that you described, he brings kind of the power and the thunder, and that other person just kind of brings the wind, right? They're kind of windy.
You could say that, John. You could say that. Okay. We do this every single. And by the way, I have maybe.
By the way, interrupt yourself while you're interrupting yourself, Brad. Go ahead.
In B block, I have a question for you on something that was on your yesterday's top or your yesterday's johncombest.com, which
nice. I'd love to see it.
I'm curious about because of the fact that I need your explanation because there's some things, well, lately there are a lot of things that are above my pay grade, which I just don't understand, and this is one of those instances. Okay, so here's what we do. John puts together this great website, johncombest.com, dozens of stories on it, but what we do is we distill it down to the top three. We bring in this guy.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts off with,
in third place,
to quote my fifth grade science teacher, Dale Ludwig, nature abhors a void. I didn't know what abhors meant. It sounded kind of dirty, but that means nature does not want a void. And Mike Kehoe filled a very important void in Franklin County yesterday. He found the successor to Tim Brinker of freedom-loving Franklin County. Tim Brinker left to join Greater St. Louis Incorporated, the regional business and lobbying group. And Mike Kehoe is filling his spot with a familiar name for Franklin County residents, and that is former state senator Dave Schatz. Dave Schatz, pending Senate confirmation, will be the new presiding commissioner of Franklin County, a great appointment for the people of Franklin County from Mike Kehoe. Did you ever work with Dave Schatz, Brad? You've been a part of the Washington community for many years.
John, I was surprised at that. I thought for sure it was going to be Chris Dieckhaus, but Dave Schatz.
Yeah, now this is your second. Let's put, as corporate people say, let's put a pen in that. And this is your second Dieckhaus reference this week. Do you have Dick on the? Excuse me. Do you have Dieckhaus on the brain, Brad?
Well, it's Scott Dieckhaus and Chris Dieckhaus, and they are truly kissing cousins. I don't know if you know the story behind that, but
Whoa,
yeah.
easy there, killer.
No, Dave Schatz, when he ran for, what did he run for? Did he run for governor? What did he ran for some statewide office? Didn't he?
He ran for U.S. Senate in 2022.
That's right. And, being that my station was located in Washington and we were licensed to Washington, he couldn't buy enough advertising on my station. I'm telling you. No, hold it. That wasn't him. He didn't buy anything on my station. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Did you make a pitch to him, Brad?
Did I make a pitch to him? Once again, don't get me going with this stuff. The thing that bothers me about so many people who cry local when, hey, you have to buy local. But then when it comes to them buying local, guess what? They don't. But that's a whole nother story. Yeah.
Oh, man. Now, when it comes to actually performing a job, let's get to an important topic. Actually performing a job, did you follow his career when he was a state senator? I mean, other than your bias about a radio advertising thing, do you generally have a positive, negative, or neutral opinion of Dave Schatz?
Well, he's a guy that knows very well about vibratory cable plows.
Yeah, that's his company, right?
Right. He and to the point where if you want a guy who can vertical bore you, man, he's the guy who can vertical bore you. Guy,
which is as opposed to you, because you can bore people from any direction.
Yeah, he's the guy that can put you into the ground. He's the guy that can shed light for thousands of miles in a little tiny piece of fiber. He's the guy.
Well, so here's the thing. This came about, and I don't mean to step on your metaphor there, Brad, but this came about yesterday, and I would also be remiss if I didn't note that Governor Kehoe also named former Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer to the University of Missouri Board of Curators, or as idiots in Missouri media today call it, the MU Board of Curators. Point of fact, MU is not the same as University of Missouri. University of Missouri St. Louis is not the same as MU. So let's get a little bit better, Missouri journalists. I'm not sure if I'll call it out publicly or not, but let's just tighten it up a little bit. So two big appointments on Tuesday, Blaine Luetkemeyer to UM Board of Curators and Dave Schatz, presiding commissioner, following in the large footsteps of Tim Brinker.
So, and the reason, and do you know the story behind the appointment of Blaine?
I don't know that, no.
He's supported by the Friends of KWMU, and he's going to be another one of the rubber stamps when they get rid of KWMU. They're just going to...
Oh, yeah, because you know what I heard, Brad? From a reliable source who's not at all completely biased and wrong, that they're just going to give those licenses away. That's what I heard. That makes sense.
They are. Because, see, John, here's how you can tell they're going to just give those licenses away. If you and I put together a group and we said, we went to the... curators of the University of Missouri. Did I get that right, John?
You did.
Okay. And if we went to them and we said, we have put together a group, we want to pay you $50 million for the licenses of KWMU, KMSD, and WQUB in Quincy. $50 million. And they're going to go, oh, no, we already got a better deal from the Friends of KWMU. And what's that deal? Well, they're going to give us $1 and they're going to give us commercials once an hour for the next 10 years. Okay, let's think about this.
Your problem, Brad, you just don't speak tote bagger.
That's right.
You didn't learn that in your college education. Dr. Camille Winter, we haven't mentioned him in the whole 3 shows. He didn't teach you how to speak tote bagger, Brad.
By the way, John, when I went to your old alma mater on Saturday and I applied for a teaching position, which didn't go very far, on the way out, guess what they gave me?
They gave you a portrait of Dr. Camille Winter. They gave you a diploma, because if I got one from Hazelwood East, anybody could get one. What'd you get, Brad?
A tote bag.
You're joking. No. Does it say Hazelwood East or Hazelwood School District?
In the break, I'll run out to my car and get it. But I got a tote bag when I put all my paperwork in. So, see, I came away with something. And maybe we'll talk about this in B Block again. But there's a point of interest that what I was very fascinated by the fact that that nobody knows the history of Hazelwood, of the Hazelwood School District. Like, for example, I made the comment to one of the people that Kirby Junior High was one of the original Hazelwood High schools, and they went, no,
yes,
it wasn't.
I was wrong about that yesterday because I thought that was originally Hazelwood East, but you were right about that, Brad. It was not.
It was not, but originally it was, I believe, and this is like ancient history, it was the second Hazelwood High School. Originally, Hazelwood High School was some little tiny place somewhere, and then they built the Hazelwood High School, which became Kirby Junior High, and then they built the big building out there in New Halls Ferry, which became Hazelwood and is now Hazelwood Central. So
and I know that we need to be conscious of time here, but I don't mean to belabor it. But the library was run with the iron fist of Mrs. Hildebrand for many years. Is that not true, Brad?
Well, I told you the bizarre story that I went up there one time, I guess about 7 or 8 years ago, and the library was moved. They moved it.
Yeah. And if you go to the engineering company, they have pictures of the before the Kirby Library and then the after. You know where you can't bring candy, though, Brad? The Kirby Junior High Rotunda. Why are we talking about candy? Maybe because story number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
The progressive blog, the Missouri Independent, has a content creator that's on the hard luck beat. Her name is Clara Bates, and she writes all these victimhood stories about how we're so mean to poor people and fat people and such like that. Clara's piece today is the headline: Ban on use of food stamps for candy, soda, debated by Missouri lawmakers. It seems as though every few years on the federal level and on the state level, we have this debate of whether people on welfare should be able to use their handouts to pay for junk food. The crux of the matter, which I know Brad Hildebrand has an opinion on, is what do you define as junk food? Is a sugary coffee drink that's got milk in it, is that a junk food, or is it healthy because it's milk? I bet people in the dairy lobby have an opinion on that. I bet people in the candy lobby have an opinion on whether people should be able to use their hand-ups. They're not handouts, they're hand-ups. Should they be able to use it to buy some Snickers and M&Ms and Pringles and, of course, Red Hot Riplets? That's a subject of debate. State Representative Jamie Gregg, who's from down in Ozark, that's down in Christian County, he sponsored this bill, and he wants to get the ball rolling in saying you cannot spend your welfare handouts. You cannot spend your SNAP money on junk food. And it got opposition from people on both sides of the aisle. Now, to be fair, there's a bunch of lobbying groups that say that this is a good idea, that we should stop promoting junk food and we should start having healthier options for people on welfare. Brad, as a man who leaves the radio studio, goes to Schnucks, and buys some high glycemic items, what do you think of this?
Well, one woman's junk food is another one's health food. And when you say junk food, when I go to Schnucks, the junk food aisles are the ones that have all those fresh produce in it. That's junk to me because it comes out of dirt. Who wants stuff that came out of dirt? You don't want stuff that was. I mean, like if I had you over to my house and I say, "Hey, John, I'm going to cook you dinner," and I cooked up some hamburgers in the grill, and then I took them and I rubbed them in some dirt outside my backyard, and I put it on a bun that I rubbed in some dirt. Would you go, "Oh my God, I'm not eating that"? I go, well, "John, it's all natural. That's all natural. It's dirt on that, right?"
I would object unless you took that dirt and maybe you made a little saute with some glyphosate with some Roundup. Then we're talking.
And I got to ask you a question about that. In B Block, have you heard of this new weed killer called spruce?
No, I haven't heard of it at all. I do know that as we speak today at 7 a.m., the good folks at Bayer are having their investment call. I wonder, Brad, based on the investor deck that I read this morning at 5 a.m., I wonder if they have anything interesting to say about glyphosate. Anyway, let's talk about spruce and B Block.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, is that one of your little intros into number one? Is that what number one is?
That is not one of my little intros, but it's just, I thought it was curious that, there's so much going on this week. We had the mayoral election yesterday, which is not in the top 3. We have so much news going on. We got Trump, all that stuff. But story number 1 is a federal issue that I know you're going to love.
And we got Bill Eigel throwing out Representative Green in the House last night. Okay, here we go.
The number one.
And a story that will knock your socks off and thrill and surprise you and unfortunately disappoint you. It turns out that in the federal free lunch program, there was a little bit of monkey business going on, a little bit of funny business with federal money. And it turns out, I hope you're sitting down, Brad. It turns out that an urban entrepreneur took a whole bunch of government money, said that she was giving it to poor kids for their lunch, but then she spent the money on herself. Brad, does this story sound at all familiar over the last, I don't know, 3-4 years?
John, how many times have we had this story about, is this the same lady that bought the $1 million house in St. Charles? Is that the same woman?
No, this is a lady that bought $1 million house in Edwardsville. Thank you for the lead into that, Brad. This woman allegedly, and her name is Diara. Maybe it's Diara. Let's go with Diara. Diara Williams allegedly stole more than $7 million from a federal program meant to feed low-income children. This piece is brought to us by Jacob Barker, the intrepid reporter from the Post-Dispatch. And the gist of it is, this woman ended up saying, "Hey, look at all my invoices that I have for food. I got it through Warford's Classic Catering." Turns out that Wofford's Classic Catering is owned by her husband. What could possibly go wrong? And I want to put a pin in that for 1 second, Brad, because some more details about this Warford alleged company was brought to us on Twitter by a listener to our show, Grant Gambling, who does a great job on Twitter pointing out details about some of these stories. He mostly focuses on federal stuff, but he had some commentary about this as well. I'll retweet him a little bit later this morning. Anyway, Brad, back to the story. This woman and her husband used the federal money to purchase a $1.4 million house in Edwardsville. And then they bought some vehicles, they got some vacations, and they sent almost $500,000 to this woman's mother-in-law. I mean, that's a good way to keep the in-laws happy, right? Hey, Mom, Merry Christmas. Here's $460,000. Here's $500,000. Hey, no, we don't need any barbecue or brisket. Just keep it. Whatever. We'll pick up some brisket at Schnucks. We'll go say hi to Brad Hildebrand in the Little Debbie aisle, and we'll pick up a little brisket and we'll say that we're providing food to low-income kids.
And this was supposedly money that was for lunches for schools during the COVID thing. Is that what this was?
Yeah, well, it started during the COVID thing. And what is not clear from this piece is that it's not clear of how long this alleged scam went on. Now, the guy from the FBI says the alleged fraud is beyond despicable. And then he gives a pretty stock quote about that the taxpayer dollars were meant for low-income kids. But what I'm guessing is, and based on what Barker said here, reading between the lines, he says that a lot of these fraud programs started in 2020, which is the beginning of the pandemic. But as I understand it, a lot of these programs that started during the pandemic just went through a wind-down period. They didn't completely stop as soon as we knew that the Wu flu was done. Like a lot of these low-income programs, they can make the argument, they being the school districts and others, could make the argument that, hey, we still need these. And if we still got money going on, let's spend it. And as Grant, the gentleman who I mentioned earlier, pointed out, that some of the schools include City Garden Montessori, also includes University City schools. So a lot of schools, Brad, these kids were supposed to get this food, but it instead went to a house in Edwardsville and some in-laws and such.
So there was never any food supplied at all? Zero?
No, I think there was food supplied. Yeah, and according to Barker, just does a good job. He does a little shoe leather journalism, at least computer leather journalism, mouse click journalism, and he goes to this catering website, and he says that there's a video up there that shows, hey, look at us. We do such a great job that we provide food to, these school districts, and we're helping the community,
It's sort of interesting.
And sorry to interrupt, Brad, but I misspoke. Barker pointed to the nonprofit's website, not the catering company website. I mean, they're owned by the same family, so pardon my mistake there. Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
If you didn't listen to the thing last night, I listened to parts of it, but I caught the part of it where Trump was giving the amount of money and the causes that all this USAID money went to, and it got to the point where after about the third or fourth one, you're going, No, there's no way they're giving money for that. And it was just
Yeah, just ridiculous.
it
Yeah.
was just like, okay, what are we doing? And you look at stuff like this and you go like, and if somebody says, well, there's no fraud in government, yeah, right. I mean, on every level there's fraud. I don't care what you say.
There's always a there's always a percentage. It's just a matter of, is it extreme? Probably not. But then you hear these stories and you're like, we don't need to be spending money on that.
It's crazy.